They used to call me Dr. Thomson. Before I came to China to start my new life, I was working for York University's security service. And in the final years before I took off, they gave me the moniker Dr. Thomson. Now, this name came from the fact that I'd been a student for so long that if it had been anybody else, they would have had their PhD by then. I liked the nickname because it was like a confirmation to my commitment to education. I didn't like the nickname because it reminded me about how many years had slipped through my fingers. By the time I graduated with just my BA, almost 15 years had gone by. Now, a big part of why this happened was in that period of time, I was expelled from the university 3 times for failure to complete assignments. Now, I think I'm a fairly intelligent person and relatively capable, so of course, I have a huge list of excuses as to why this took place. Here's a few of them. So, I generally did very good work, but getting started on that work was sometimes so difficult it was almost physically painful. I got great feedback from a lot of my TAs and professors. I won awards from the individual college within the university, but my momentum was absolutely unreliable. In a very difficult personal story, a cousin of mine came to visit me at the university to tell me that she had been attacked. And my emotional response to that was so big that I didn't end up doing any work for over a month. During one of my periods of study, I didn't notice that time was going by, and it felt like I blinked and 3 years were gone. And then while all this was going on, generations of my friends were graduating and moving on. I was studying something that I liked. I was studying philosophy and literature, and so I couldn't figure out why it was so difficult for me to engage in something that I knew that I was enjoying. Then I remembered a parent-teacher conference when I was 13 years old with one of my favorite teachers, Ms. Buzovetsky, who was trying to convince my mother to get me connected with a doctor for an assessment. My mother's response was that she didn't believe in any of this stuff, that I was just lazy and needed to try harder. Now I am 41 years old, and 141 days ago I was given an official diagnosis for very severe ADHD. Now, up until my obsession with understanding ADHD in myself, I was under the impression that this disorder is just a matter of having a little bit too little attention to give to things that we all think are important while having very inconsistent levels of energy. Now, as a teacher, I see this often in the classroom where my students will be powerfully bored with my lessons, but then if they've got a video game in their hand, it feels like they can focus for hours and hours at a time. Now, in the months since my diagnosis, I've learned just how much more there is to it, how much more complicated. Now, they won't let me talk about all of this, so I've picked one very specific way that I want to explain about how ADHD affects people. So ADHD starts with the amygdala by making it overreactive and hypersensitive. The amygdala is the brain's emotional alarm system. Now, this means that every emotion that we have is bigger. So a gentle criticism can feel like a deep cut. Social rejection can feel world-endingly devastating. Every emotion is an overreaction forever. Now, to the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex's job is to act like a brake. When that reaction starts to build up, the prefrontal cortex catches it and slows it down, giving you a chance to assess what it is that you're feeling and decide how to react. But with much weaker connections and a very limited supply of dopamine, the brake doesn't work. This means that every emotion lasts far longer than it should. Now, when every emotion lasts far longer than it should, and when every emotion, when every reaction is an overreaction, this is called emotional dysregulation. And this is one of the more common but less understood manifestations of ADHD. Now, earlier I said that part of my reason for failing out of university, one of the times was when my cousin was attacked. When she came to the university to tell me her story, instead of just listening to her and offering her the support that she needed, I reacted with anger. I ended up going to court with her in support, where I would sit on her side of the room in support. vibrating with rage. I felt like I was wildly out of control and I couldn't understand why. Back at school, I couldn't get anything done. Now that was January in 2006, and now I can look back and feel like I understand myself a lot more. I didn't have an anger problem, I was just drowning in my emotions. I was drowning in anger. Now ADHD means that every reaction is an overreaction, and this one was so powerful that I lost control of myself and I couldn't get any work done for a month. At the end of that year, the university asked me to take a year off. That year was a waste of time. Now, on a bad day, I think about wasted time. On a good day, I think about bridges. Okay, so bridges. What is a bridge? It's a man-made thing that usually connects two natural spaces. Now, for 40 years, I thought I lived on the same island as everyone else, but 141 days ago, I realized I've been on my own island, connected to others by bridges for my whole life. Now, the thing I like about the bridge analogy is that while these islands obviously represent our natural lives, the bridges are man-made. They take effort to build. They take intentionality to maintain, and our connections take that same effort and intentionality. Now, the more I reflect on the connections in my life, the more I realize that they've not just been influenced, but overwhelmingly defined by this difference in my head. And the question that I've asked myself forever, and I'm only starting to understand, is, why don't you understand me? Now, since I told my mom about my diagnosis, we have started a dialogue where she is trying to better understand our relationship. She's trying to better understand my teenage anger and trying to better understand how I've come to become this person. Our bridge is stronger than ever. When I told my only brother about my diagnosis, he interrupted me to tell me that he thought I was trying to find an excuse to cover up my own bruised ego at his recent success. We have not spoken since that day. It has been 140 days, so I guess that bridge is underwater now. Perhaps more importantly, my relationship with myself has changed a lot. This discovery is allowing me a new peace. I can start to forgive myself for old anger that I've never understood, and I can start to accept past failures with a little bit more grace. So for the first time in my life, I feel like I understand myself. Now, it complicates the visual analogy of the bridge a little bit, but it's taken me 4 decades to realize that I need to be responsible for my own bridge to myself. Now, it's very easy to say we're all different. We say it without understanding each other, and we definitely say it without understanding ourselves. So I've been a teacher for some years now, and sometimes in getting to know my students, I will ask them that same repetitive question: what do you want to be when you grow up? What's your dream? Now, not always, but sometimes they'll ask me what my dream is, and I will pretty consistently surprise them with the answer. I'm living it. I've wanted to do this, and I've wanted to be this since I was 14 years old. Now, in the last 141 days, I've also been reflecting on why I love this job so much and trying to understand that part of myself better. So, I get a huge dopamine hit anytime I learn anything new. So I actually love professional development. I also get a lot of dopamine anytime that I find solutions. So the creative problem solving required for a classroom means that I get this cycle. I naturally want to multitask, so as long as my spreadsheets are well organized, I find it very easy to deal with the chaos of a classroom. I'm obsessed with overanalyzing emotional cues, which makes it much easier for me to connect myself with the students and find them the support that they need. And then I get a ton of oxytocin from social bonding, which speeds up building healthy and trusting relationships. And then I get even more dopamine when I see student success because it tells my brain that I did a good job. So what does that actually mean when I put all that together? I genuinely feel like I was born to be a teacher. And that is some very good understanding for me to have. Now, earlier I said one of the most important things about bridges is understanding that they are man-made. So, when I teach essay writing, there's a lot of challenges involved, but I find 2 concepts that my students really struggle with are hooks and calls to action. Now, I tried to hook you in with that bit about being called Dr. Thomson, and I hope that worked. These are my calls to action. First, to try and understand each other better. Now, I've spent my whole life being misunderstood, and now that I kind of understand myself, I see it so clearly when people are misunderstanding me. As best as you can, try and see past the frustrations that might come up and understand the person in front of you. Now, as reactions start to build up, try and see that the person in front of you is maybe not trying to cause you a frustration, but is just someone asking to be understood. See that the bridge between you and that person is something that takes effort, and that if you ignore it, if you forget to take care of it, it may not last. Second, try and understand yourself better. Now, I've spent the majority of my life failing to understand myself, causing me heartbreak, chaos, pain, frustration, and all manner of social friction. Now, I know you've heard this advice before. If someone is being critical of you, that has more to do with them than it does with you. Okay, we understand that, but flip it. When you're feeling critical of someone else, when you're starting to feel that emotion build up and you're getting ready to attack, pause and try and understand yourself more deeply. Why are you upset? Why are you reacting? Why are you motivated? But even more than that, I implore you to take the time to see yourself. See the you that is behind the you that you present to the world. It takes effort and it takes intentionality, but it's the only way to truly know who you are. Thank you.